Starting Monday, it may be impossible for some Idaho school districts to keep their internet running.
And that's what legislative leaders are saying at the State House as they try and deal with this whole broadband mess. In tonight's Making the Grade, Idaho Education News reporter Kevin Richard explains what's next. Kevin's here for Making the Grade on this Wednesday, and we continue on the internet mess that's happening at the State House and now has transferred to a mess for school districts because the money is not there. So the school districts are now going to have to pay for their own broadband. How is this all going down?
Well, it's going down pretty quickly in terms of the deadline. Basically, in the next few days, schools could lose their broadband access. That's the fear, and that's kind of what's gripping the whole process at the State House. So where it stands right now, schools are being told to go out, shop their own broadband, find their own contractors, cut their own deals, go to the state and seek reimbursement. That was what came out of the legislature yesterday, the idea that the legislature might set aside money to reimburse districts for what they have to pay out.
Do we know, Kevin, if that money is enough money to even reimburse the districts?
It might be. I mean, looking at some of the tables that the legislature has looked at, for what we're talking about for the 4 months, it might be enough money, but that may not be the only problem here. The bigger problem for a lot of districts is finding a vendor, finding somebody who can provide internet. And that was something that came out today as I was writing about an email that House Speaker Scott Bedke and Senate President Pro Tem Brent Hill sent to their own members. They explained this plan to them last weekend, but said, you know, there are some rural districts that are going to have trouble finding an internet provider.
So Idaho Education Network, was the original purpose behind this was not only to link schools, but specifically to make sure that rural school districts were well served when it came to broadband. So what did it exactly say in these emails that you received?
Well, what it said was, at this point, the plan that we have is what we've seen this week. Basically, districts go out and find their own internet and we'll reimburse them. But what the legislative leaders said in this email is some rural districts are going to have a tough time making this work, and we may have to come up with some sort of provision that allows some of them to pool together. So you still have the problem that you had in 2009 that the Idaho Education Network was supposed to address. The idea that it's really hard for a small rural district without a whole lot of buying power and a whole lot of buying options to go out and get broadband.
All right, the deadline coming up this Sunday. We'll see if the network actually does go dark. Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about something we haven't talked about in weeks because it's been overshadowed by the broadband mess, and that is teacher pay, tiered licensure. Where does all of this stand, and where does the money stand for the education budget altogether?
Well, I think the whole education budget, it's pretty much on schedule, really. I mean, this is where we are usually in the budget process, and it won't be until March until we start to see some numbers attached to some programs. But the whole issue of teacher pay and teacher licensure has taken kind of the back seat to what's going on with broadband. But beyond that, a lot of discussions seem to be going on behind closed doors. There has not been any proposal that has been presented publicly to this point, and we're 6 weeks into the session. This is a big issue. A lot of folks are fairly heavily invested in trying to get this thing resolved this session. We're a month and a half in and still kind of waiting to see what sort of proposal or proposals come to the fore.
As we knew, education would be the hot topic once again this year at the State House, proving to be maybe even more so than we realized. Yes. If you'd like to read much more about what Kevin has written about, not only on broadband, but on all of the education topics, specifically coming out of the State House as well, you can go to their website, idahoednews.org. Kevin, thanks for being here for Making the Grade.